Once you start thinking about the mentality of jam packing things in, being more efficient, that's where that profitability percentage is going to go up.
This is Growth in Dentistry, a dental intelligence podcast, where we ask the question, what does growth in dentistry mean to you? I'm Steve Jensen, a dated dental nerd, and your host.
Welcome, everyone, to another Growth in Dentistry podcast. I am super excited for today's episode. We have Mike and Paula from Next Level Consultants on with me. Now, before we jump in, a quick shout out to the marketing team at Dental Intelligence and Dental Intelligence for sponsoring this podcast week after week after week. I say it every time. There's so much work that goes into this, and I'm grateful for the marketing team's work in the background to support us and support you as listeners to get the best content out there for you. As always, they have a $50 gift card. If you'll just take a demo of Dental Intel, check it out. If it's been a while, there are some cool new things that have come out: scorecards, automated forms, automated consents. There's some online scheduling stuff, and we've got more to come this year that's on the way. So if you haven't checked it out, check it out. It's worth a shot. Okay, now without any further ado, I want to jump into today's episode. It was a short intro today. Now, let me tell you, I'm just getting to know Mike and Paula, just so everyone knows. So Mike Dinsio, Paula Quinn. Mike, from what I've gathered, is a former banker. So used to work as a banker, MBA guy that got into dentistry. And I'm going to let him tell a little bit more about that. He's also, because of his background, as you can imagine, with the consolidation happening in dentistry, DSOs coming in, doctors getting a big group of doctors getting to that retirement age where they're ready to sell. Mike also is a transition specialist. So he's one of the best at looking at your business, helping you understand how to maximize the sell of it. Mike, do you also do buying or just seller side? Both seller and buying side. So Mike can help you if you're buying a practice, evaluating it. If you're selling a practice, Mike and team can help you out with that as well. And then our good friend Paula, and I say good friend because I just met her. Paula is a hygienist. I just joked about her, how she got into dentistry story, but she was a hygienist by trade. I've gathered that at some point, Paula, you made the transition and actually owned a practice. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Mike said it was open. It was like it sounded like it was probably like a Profi Palace, just like humming through like low profitability type stuff, and you helped turn that thing into a machine. Shrunk it down to what, 3 days? Is that right, Paula? Mike was
Correct.
saying so.
Yes,
Reduced
sir.
working days. And Mike threw out a stat, but I want to make sure you say it because I think I'm going to get it wrong. How much dentistry do you guys do in a day? What was your like record dentistry in a day?
Oh, man.
Paula, you're muted.
Paula, you're muted.
She can't hear us. Mike, what's
Guys, I'm trying to save you. I have a dog screaming in the background.
Oh, hey, let him join the podcast. We are dog friendly here at the Growth in Dentistry Pod.
Yes.
Paula, what was your guys' record? Mike was sharing that you guys did something bogus, like a amount of dentistry in a day.
Oh gosh, I don't know, Michael. I don't know what you were sharing, the amount of dentistry I did in a day. In a day?
Best day, your record day, do you know? Do you remember?
Best day, probably about 140, I would say.
In a day?
That's so much.
Wait, you think it was more?
Yeah, and no, that's a big day. Yeah. Gosh.
I would say record day.
Yeah, record day.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be the topic today is how to really get your days juiced, right? To get the most out of each day. I think there's a lot of things going on in dentistry where docs are, trying to get profitability under control. And to me, it's about efficiency. So, yeah.
Yeah, so let's hit today's. Why don't you give a little background, Mike? So for listeners, we're going to talk practice management today, but Mike and Paula had some interesting ideas. We're going to break it down into 3 things that you guys can take to help focus on the profitability of your dental practice, as well as taking care of patients at the same time. So before we get to that, Mike, tell us a little bit about how you got into dentistry, or how you and Paula, maybe better is, so you guys own this consulting firm, Next Level Consultants. You've got 65 clients, you're nationwide. How did you guys come together to create this thing? So you're both founders. And then let's jump into these kind of 3 tips you have for practices today?
Yeah, I think our story is a little unique, but it's probably not crazy unique. I was a banker for a while, got a little burned out on the transactional side of banking and lending, and I was out. I transitioned over to consulting and got a little overwhelmed with the fact that I didn't know anything about how the operations worked or how to manage hostile patients, you name it. But I did understand the business and the marketing side of it. And so that's when I found Paula, totally on accident. And Paula was over there consulting on her side, and it was all about clinical operations and um, getting offices more efficient. And so that's when we decided, hey, look, like if we join superpowers, we could potentially rule the dental world. And so that's what we did. So we created this company, and that's been our whole mantra and vision is, if you don't know something about the business or the business of dentistry, get an expert that has real world experience so that we can actually consult on experience and not just kind of high level, but really focused on real world situations. So yeah, ex-banker, MBA marketing background, Paula, 35 plus years clinical, owned a dental practice, speaks for Invisalign and Biolays. So really, we just make a good team, a yin and yang, as we say.
Well, I'm a huge fan of the phrase that success breeds success. Like when you get people who have done it in the room with people who want to do it, that is a crucial element to create success. Now, not everyone can do that, by the way. There's so many people I've met that are successful and they like don't know how to replicate themselves. So the fact that you and Paula also have the minds to be able to say, hey, let's break down what made us successful and be able to replicate your success in others is a really cool thing to do. So of course, naturally, you're going to get into consulting. Makes a ton of sense. So let's talk strategies then. So, and I'll set the stage this way. Obviously, everyone knows financial pressures have become heavy on practices, between reimbursements with insurance not increasing. We have increased costs. One of the biggest ones is probably our human capital costs, but, other things are increasing in costs as well. And then on top of that, there's a few things market-wide I look at. So I get to look at, industry trends, and patient-based growth has kind of been slowing down. And the DSO side, you see less of a focus on like buying a shiz ton of dental practice and more of a focus on how do we improve profitability of the practices we have already purchased. And I think that same behavior is kind of being forced out in a general owner practice as well. Like I'm just kind of my solo guy. I'm out here, or girl, and I own my practice, and I'm having, because of these forces, having to figure out how to make my business more profitable. So, Mike and Paula, you guys said, hey, there are 3 things that you guys wanted to talk about today. So, why don't you guys introduce those and let's hit them one by one and see if we can't get some great advice out to our listeners today.
Well, Paula's probably going to be the one that speaks the most about these topics. So I'll just kind of set the tone and say that we do a lot of transitions, helping buyers get in and own. And when we're looking at practices to purchase, or just looking at docs that have kind of plateaued and are struggling with profitability, one of the very first things that we look at is kind of this wages to revenue thing. And quickly you can see that days aren't being maxed, where you've got a lot of support on days, but but okay production. And I'm not saying these strategies work for every practice, but if you look at it and you manage wages to production, simply those 2 things, you can figure out how to get your practice more profitable. Wherever you're at today, you can be more profitable. And so to do that, you have to get more in one day and potentially collapse. So essentially, yeah. And what were the 3? Help us out, Steve.
Yeah, so here we go. Here's what I've got my notes on. The first one was, hey, let's talk about our weekly schedules. And that's what you're starting to get into right now is, hey, I'm open 4 days a week or 5 days a week. And is that the right decision for the business and my patients, right? Profitability wise. And you were starting to get into kind of wages. So we can hit that first. The second one was increasing frequency. And the third one was same day treatment. So we'll kind of follow through those 3 if you guys are cool with that.
Yeah, I think, yeah, Paul, I think we should hit frequency first, because if you get your frequency up, then maybe you don't need to collapse a day. But if you got the frequency up, then maybe staying in the same amount of days that you're working. But if you got your frequency up, then the only result is to collapse maybe the days. So, Paula, what are your ideas on getting frequency up?
Well, I think it just really all starts with auditing, auditing your day, auditing your schedule, having one of those amazing morning huddles where you're always looking at opportunity on the patients that are already coming in the practice. And those opportunities can be treatment, like Michael said, what you brought up frequency. It's, really, just as a hygienist, I preach this all the time, that we're so used to putting people in those 6-month boxes that sometimes we forget to really say, is this what's best for the patient? We're looking at those insurance reimbursements where it's what we've always done. So it's just like an automatic thing. So I think really looking at, we always say hygiene is the kind of the heart of the practice. And what we mean by that is it's really just the doctor obviously has nothing to diagnose if they don't come in for hygiene unless it's like an emergency. So people call for a cleaning and they get other things. So it's always when they're in there for that recare or continuing care appointment, it's at the hygienist looking at them to see, is this really what's best for the patient, regardless of insurance or what we have always had them on. And then the doctor also, looking at the opportunity there. And the morning huddle creates time to see, do we have time for crossover? Do we have any, holes in the day? What can we do with our day? And I'm kind of getting into same day treatment, but it's all of that, it all goes together. So I think auditing the schedule is one really big thing. Having a morning huddle, just like you would if you were a sports team, having that huddle and planning your whole day, very intentional. I think the next thing, which probably needs to back up a little bit, is really what is your BAM? What is your bare minimum that you can make in a practice that you can survive? And then what kind of profitability do you want to have as a dentist? And then blocking your day, scheduling your day, getting really intentional on like, what do you want to make per day? I think anything that gets focused on can happen. And all of this is really focused. It's what do we need to make for the year, the month, the week, the day? How does our day need to be designed to make that? Then it's that day really looking into that schedule, creating it, all the intentionality around that, the morning huddles, and then everyone just, being headed toward that same goal that, Michael always tells an analogy about his daughter playing soccer, and when they're like 5 to 7, they're all running in different directions, and don't know where to go, and you have to be like that way, so I feel like it's kind of that way with a team. It's like making sure they all understand we're going that way today or in the next hour is really big. So I kind of think I like touched on a little bit of all of it. But that being said, with the frequencies but condensing that schedule, we always come in and help docs, and you'll see hole here. People just not completely understanding scheduling. So that's usually where we start, is like timing a doctor. Really, does it take 30 minutes to do a crown prep? Does it take an hour? Does it take 90 minutes? And then dividing that time between the doctor, assistants make the world go around a lot of times. Really, if you put those assistants to use, you can condense that day, because every time you add in a day, you're adding team wages, which you mentioned earlier is one of the highest, overheads of a practice. So all of that just really, they want to be available in case a patient calls, right? They're like, we got to be here 5 days a week. What if a patient calls? Our team doesn't have enough time. They need to come in multiple days. We outsource some services so that, you can get someone to answer your phones, or you can have them forwarded or something when you're not there. And I think if you learn the finesse of leading a patient to the appointment times that you want to lead them to, they will come in. They don't need the 8s and the 4 o'clocks. There's practices all over the world that do it. So I think just, really putting a patient where you want them, giving them minimal options, and then condensing that day to where you're, they always say work smarter, not harder, right? condensing those days where, you can make the same amount of money in 3 days than you do in 5. You're reducing your overhead wages and you have somebody available to answer phones. You'll get those patients in. So
I think
said
it's
it
I think
all in one big breath.
Yeah, I was like, I want to jump in too. Mike, do you want to say something?
Okay, go ahead.
I was just gonna say I think what Paula said is spot on. Is really working backwards. We talk about waterfalls all the time, and I don't think people are very intentional about what they're trying to do every day. I think it's a very reactive industry, isn't it? Where you just kind of walk in and do what's on the schedule, and you might be exhausted or you might be bored. But ironically, sometimes the bored, quote unquote, are the most productive, and the crazy days are sometimes the least productive. Isn't that interesting? So I think really backing up and just waterfalling what you're trying to do is a keynote here to take away on that piece.
Oh, 100% agree. And as Paul was talking, I just like had you just like rattled off like a ton, and it worked for me. So all of a sudden I had this aha moment where I'm like, I realize now why we're talking about reducing days, why we're talking about increasing frequency. And when I'm hearing that, what I just heard you say was, hey, there's a lot of kind of, I don't know what you call it, but like crap time in the day, like pitter patter around time in the day that probably is not necessary. So as we're thinking about our schedule, that's one consideration is, are we making the best use? If human capital is the most expensive thing we have in our expenses, are we making, outside of maybe like lease and stuff, are we making the best use, or maybe more? Is it more? More than lease. Definitely more, way more than lease. What am I saying out loud?
Yeah.
Astronomically higher than lease. Dumb comment. So
it's actually astronomically higher than anything.
So it's our biggest one. Are we using it to the best? And I hopefully people don't misinterpret what I said there. It makes it sound like they're just like people to be used. That's not what I mean. I just mean like, are we being efficient as a team? And I'll say this, like when we're efficient and we're getting good stuff done, that's when it's fun. It's really fun working in a business that gets good stuff done. I'm telling you, it is fun. If you're like not sure what you're doing in the business, it's not fun. So when we're efficient, we're humming, then that's fun. And then the third thing is same day treatment. I'm starting to realize now, so let's say I'm a listener. So I'm thinking, okay, I've got 4 days or 5 days I'm opening, and I'm starting to like catch your drift. I can kind of think of 2 reasons why I might reduce days. One is like I don't have enough patient flow. So as I start to condense, it's like, oh, like I've kind of spread my patients across 5 days, but I could probably, if I was more efficient, I could do it in 3 or 4, or maybe I've always been doing it in 4 days, but if I was more efficient, I could be doing it in 3. So another reason might be I just like don't have enough patients, and I'm just like open 4 days, and I've got, me and a hygienist and 1 part-time hygienist, and I've got 900 active patients. And in that situation, it's like, I probably should only be open 2.5 days if I really condense schedule, right? But I'm kind of hoping we're going to grow into what I have open. So you guys talk about that a little bit. Like, how do you know if the listener's listening, like, depending on the circumstance they're in, how do you, like, talk to me about like condensing that schedule, and then we'll start to fit same day into this, because I can see how that also helps with like efficiency and keeping some high value stuff on the schedule, so we don't pack it all in with kind of low profitability stuff. So
let me say this. So I think our industry lacks creativity sometimes, where the business of dentistry is so in 15 increments. It's so blocked. Listen to Paula, she's trying to block you in right now with block scheduling. She's right. But the point is sometimes we lose creativity. And as you were saying that, if you're 5 days, maybe you could get it to a 4th, but that doesn't mean that you can't open a 5th once every month.
Yeah.
Or a Saturday once a month, or a Saturday every 2 months, or sorry, 2 Saturdays every month. And there's a purpose. Again, what we're doing is we're trying to make those days more efficient, and then maybe having a skeleton crew in certain days and blasting production on those particular days. So creativity is being lost in a lot of ways. But once you start thinking about the mentality of jam packing things in, being more efficient, that's where that profitability percentage is going to go up. So be creative there. Paula, I think you
Can
were
I ask a question? Can I just ask, like, what does a condensed, efficient daily schedule look like? Like, if there's kind of a rough picture of what that looks like, does that make sense, Paula?
Yeah, I think it's utilizing your team. If there's no reason for, like, when you've got an extra dental assistant or it's something that's in their scope of practice, there's no reason not to utilize them. We go in practices, and I'll just give an example of like a crown prep. We'll go in and doctor's making the temporary, and that's 30 minutes of their time when you've got, two dental assistants in your practice that could, it's in their scope of practice to make a temporary. So get out of the room and do something else and let them do what they can do. And I'd say if they can't, let's find the resources to teach them. If they can, you've got to trust them. I mean, that's what the name of a team is all about, right? We have them there for a reason. So when, Michael's not wrong, I'm talking about block scheduling, but it is creative. It's really finding what is the exact amount of time that a dentist needs to be in the room, and when do they not need to be in the room? When they don't need to be in the room, utilize your team to do those things. And so, he's also right. And when we do recommend condensing 3, when you're starting to, like expand, like you're going to explode there on those 3 days, add one day once a month or twice a month or a half a Friday a month. It doesn't mean that you can't go back to those 4 days, but your 4 days should be because you're growing, not just because you're a dental practice. And I think that's what's confusing. It's, oh, we should be, like you said earlier, it's like we should be open and available. Will you miss something? Maybe an opportunity for an emergency, but then I think, like Michael said, that's an opportunity. You have a skeleton crew, or you have something arranged with your dental assistants, like, hey, if we get something, are you willing to come in? It's just thinking outside the box a little bit.
Stephen, we set up a lot of startups, and everybody says I can't get team members that will work less than 4 days, and it's just simply not true. There's plenty of team members. In fact, post-COVID, people want more flexibility.
Yeah.
One person might be working 2 days here, and that same person works at this office 2 days because it works in their life. Mm-hmm. You said your wife is a hygienist and she Googled most flexible jobs as a mom. Yeah. That's exactly what's happening today in COVID. So to find a front office person that's cool with 3 days, or a hygienist that's good with 1 day, it's actually more flexible than it ever has been. So I'm not saying wipe out your whole team that works 5 days. No, but I am saying start paying attention to your capacity and figure out how to potentially shrink your schedule days.
And that's why it's important to time, because capacity for one office is completely different capacity for a different practice. Some will say, well, I don't want the patients to feel not important. If you're a dental assistant and your front office and your hygienist are on the same mission and vision as you, they're not going to not feel important. I can make you feel just as important as Dr. John. It's only when you make it that I'm not as important that they're going to feel it's not as important, right? I can do all those things. So I think capacity is different for each practice. I mean, certainly you don't want patients waiting around because you're so packed. But you also don't want that space. So it's really about timing. And will it work 100% of the time? Absolutely not. Nothing does. But we always go by the 80-20 rule, right? If it normally takes doctor 40 minutes to drill a crown prep, we're going to plan for 40 minutes. If for some reason it takes a little longer that time, we're going to figure that out. If it takes a little bit less, great. We've got some time on our hands, So I think it's not getting caught up in that. We talk to office all the time about the 80-20 rule, because they're like, well, we have one patient. It's like, okay, that's 1 out of 1,500. So let's concentrate on the majority. So I think it's timing first, really timing. And I usually give that job to the dental assistants, because the dentists make up how much time it takes them. I can do a crown prep in 20 minutes. Well, no, you can't. There's a lot of things that go into it. So that's where it all starts. So capacity in my office, I might be able to do 20 patients a day, 5,000. Dr. John might be able to do only 6 patients, and at 3,500, that might be the pace that they're at. And that's what you gotta be realistic about, is what pace are you at? You have to have 2 dental assistants too. You can't kill one for a dental assistant, having them do everything. So
Now,
that capacity is hard, to say what it is.
I'm interested to hear, if you guys don't mind, I'd be interested to kind of hear maybe an example, like a story, whether that's like Paul, the practice you worked at, or one of the clients you guys had. Like, tell me a story, like, how have you gone? Give me an example of a doctor and team where, like, where were they? How many, days were they working, and what were you able to accomplish with this strategy we've been talking about?
An example. Do you have
Well,
one? Hey?
Paula's is probably the best. I mean, when people say, "What can you get done with a crew of like this?" and you were looking for benchmarks or numbers,
Yeah.
I do go back to Paula's practice because she was in Phoenix, Arizona. Her fees weren't as high as like our Washington clients who have higher fee schedules. So she was kind of like in the middle of the country, which are kind of good averages for fee schedules, and all PPO, not fee for service. And she was close to, well, she was about 900,000, and she had 1.5 front office,
Mm.
one and a half dental assistants, if she counts herself as a dental assistant. Uh, one,
1.5 hygienists, if I count myself as a hygienist.
which is not possible, but one hygienist and one doctor. And I think she pretty much used 4 chairs up for the most part. And so that was about as lean and mean as I've seen. Her profitability exploded as someone that had to write checks to dentists, right? 30% or more going to the dentist, and she still made great money. And I think when she grabbed that office, it was Medicaid, it was open 5 days a week. They had a crazy membership plan. And so it was truly a drop Medicaid, drop that membership plan, shrink it to 3 days, kind of one and one of all positions. And I would say you could easily get to probably 750 with that crew right there. One and one, maybe even 800. So if you use those numbers, I think that's a good kind of lighthouse, I suppose. Yeah. But Paula mentioned earlier in the episode, which I think is key, utilizing third-party services can get you from kind of that plateau till the next hump. So if you're front office, and that will be the first person that starts screaming at you doing 750 with one front office person, they're going to be like, dude, I can't check all this in. I'm missing calls. I'm not verifying insurance. I'm not treatment planning. So maybe offload the billing, offload the insurance verification. And then that's now that 1.5. That was that half person that I mentioned earlier. So,
but even all the technology and the automated stuff has really, I think, don't you think that in itself just makes an impact with online scheduling, forms going out automated, just all the things that, that really help that, back in the day, when I used my paper scheduler, because I was in a practice where we had a paper scheduler, it's come a long way. So.
And that really is a tip of the hat to Medento and what you guys have done. And even post-COVID, I remember coaching clients before COVID, and it was still handwriting forms. Today, you like online. I mean, COVID really did change the electronic footprint in a good way. So you're right, Paula. The efficiency up front has really exploded in a good way.
Now we're coming up, and this flew by so fast. So coming up at the end of time, I'll share this as like my takeaway so far, and then I want to ask kind of the podcast question to you guys. My takeaway so far, like if you're listening, like a huge takeaway. I loved your advice, Mike, where you're like, hey, like we're not super creative in dentistry. So when you think about the schedule, when you think about the team, when you think about the dentistry you're doing every single day, we can be far more creative in engineering. What does success look like? And in what time period do I want to create that? Whether that's in a day, and then we can engineer that into kind of our weeks, months, and years, and back into those numbers. So I really like the invitation to be creative and to think through are how many days a week are we working, our frequency of visits and kind of efficiency, and then same day treatment. Now the question I always ask everyone, and I'll like hear from both of you, and that's, what does growth in dentistry mean to you? I'd love to hear your answer to that.
Mine would be learn from your mistake, learn from the day before, learn all day long. It just, if it's not working, change it, just learn from it.
Amen to that. Simple and sweet. Mike?
My answer, and it's really more towards ownership, docs in ownership, is get comfortable with being uncomfortable, because owning a business is so uncomfortable. Even for Paula and I, we own our own company. We get put into uncomfortable situations every single day, and you just have to embrace it and lean into it instead of like, oh my God, what's happening here? So get comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of that. But I'm also like an endurance athlete. For as an adult, it's like the best thing where I've just learned like, oh, so much of life is monotony, and the more kind of in my own way, the more comfortable I can get with monotony, right? Where like that is the journey of discovering joy in the daily moments and the exciting, like when we have an awesome day as a team, like soak that in. And when you have a sucky day as a team, take a big breath and know that not every day is going to be a sucky day. Like you'll have some cool moments that are, right there on the horizon, and that's part of the gift and joy of life. So yeah, I'm a huge fan of that. Getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. Well, thank you both for joining. If listeners want to reach out to you guys, what's the best way to reach out to you guys, Mike and Paula? Website, email?
Yeah.
nextlevelconsultants.com. We'll throw in the show notes for sure.
Yeah, it's nxlevelconsultants.com. We threw out the idea of creativity today. It's kind of hard to be creative if you don't know how to do it. Mm-hmm. It's really easy for me to throw out creative ideas, but then Paula has to figure it out in our offices. And I'll say, get people that you trust, like, and want to do business with. And sometimes just getting you outside those boxes is the way to go, whether it's our firm or another firm. Definitely reach out. We'll send you show notes, Stephen, to put in down below.
Be great.
But yeah, hit us up on our website. We got to redo it. It's under progress, but no judgment there.
Sweet. Yeah. And then any resources you want to add, I'll just throw them in the show notes so that people can check them out. Things that are interesting for you guys, any, info about you as well. So.
All right. Awesome.
Well, thank you guys for joining. This has been awesome. And thanks, listeners, again. This has been another episode of the Growth in Dentistry podcast, where we ask the question, what does growth in dentistry mean to you? My name is Steve Jensen, your host. Keep growing.